And so sometimes we lose our grip on things, and David said, well, let me not have the hand of man on my life. And then we discover that if we lose our grip and we don't pick it up, we actually end up resigning our purpose. We give up on our purpose. Let's look at this idea of it being borrowed. The word axe head is not actually found in the original text. What's found is iron. The iron fell into the water. And to make sense of that, the English translators have said, well, it's an axe head. Well, now, I don't know if you've ever swung an axe, but I know this. The harder you swing an axe, the tighter the axe head gets on the handle, because it's a tapered handle and it's got a wedge in the end of it, and the harder you swing it, the tighter the axe head gets. What's actually happened here is that he's swung back. Now, bear in mind, he's training to be a prophet. He's not training to be a lumberjack. We understand that, don't we? He's just lending a hand. I'll give it a go. But he's swung back and off it's gone. You know, he's sort of done this with it. It's swung back. Oh, it's gone. Where is it? And he hears a plop behind him. He understands that all of a sudden it's all gone wrong. And it's a borrowed axe head. Well, the idea, one commentator says, being borrowed is too weak. It actually has the word of it was pleaded or begged for. In other words, he's gone to somebody and said, look, let me borrow your axe. And he said, look, you know, whoever it is has said to him something like, I've seen you. You're no good at this. You know, just leave it. No, but we're building this house for the school of prophets, you know, and I want to be part of it. No, and you can understand there's something gone on here. It's been a pleading. It's been a real desperation. It's almost grudgingly given to him. Well, all right, go on then. But bring it, you know, just bring it back, will you? Yeah, it'll be fine. First swing's fine. Second swing's fine. Third swing, he's blown it. Now, how many of us can relate to that? Think, yeah, I want to do this, and it all just goes wrong, and it all goes sour. You see, what we need to understand here is something about our primary and our secondary ministries. You probably can't read that too well, but it says, you know what the picture is, it says, hundreds of years from now, it will not be a matter of what my bank account was, the sort of house I lived in, or the kind of car I drove, but the world may be different because I did something so bafflingly crazy that my ruins become a tourist attraction. There's this idea of a primary and secondary ministry. You see, this thing of it being borrowed, we discover that he will have to make reparation and restitution. You see, in the 8th century BC, iron was really, really valuable. It was something that you couldn't do without, and it would have cost an awful lot of money. But for somebody whose primary calling is in the prophetic area, he's still willing to get involved in an area that's not his initial ministry. He's still willing to step out and say, I'm going to be involved in that. Even though I'm called to be a prophet and I'm learning that, I'm still going to step out and do something that is foreign to me, but I want to be part of the community and I want to contribute in any way he can. So he wants to help where he's needed. Now, how often in church do we hear folks say, that is not my ministry? That is not my job. For those of you who can't read that, it says, I'm sure glad the hole isn't at our end. It is not my job. I've heard people dress that up as spiritual. I'm not sure that everything I've ever done in church life was my job or my call, but I willingly served. You see, this young man has got that in his life. He's got a servant's heart. And so as he's there and as he's lost this axe head, he suddenly realizes that the Levitical law can be applied to this situation now. Having begged for the use of this axe, he then, he would be au fait with scriptures, and he would have known that the Levitical law said in Leviticus 6 that if you borrow something, and if you lose that article, then you not only have to give the value of that article back, but you have to give 1/5 of its value on top of that. In other words, 20% extra. So not only was this a valuable article because iron was a valuable thing in those days, but he was going to have to not just give it back, but he was going to have to make reparation for the inconvenience and make restitution. And we might say, well, that's fine then, that's Old Testament. But we find in the account of Zacchaeus when he saved in Luke 19 that he gave restitution to those that he had wounded and hurt. He gave them back over and above that which he had taken from them. Now, we can only do that, and we can only have that heart to do that if we have the Holy Spirit working inside of us. Because that really goes against the grain of everything that's natural, isn't it? That just goes against the grain of everything that we might think is normal or appropriate. So we've got this guy here who's tried but failed. He's tried but failed. And he's failed in such a way that he thinks he will never be able to serve God again. Because what he's got here is have to make reparation. If he doesn't have a lot of money, then he will end up being the slave of the owner of the axe until that is paid off. So he sees not only has his secondary ministry failed, but his primary ministry of being a prophet is also going to be taken away from him. Now, I don't know about you, but that must have been a desperate situation to be facing at that point of failure in that man's life. That must be desperate, thinking it's all over. And I don't know if you've made mistakes in your early teens. I'm sure the tweens are lovely people. Any tweens made a mistake here? Never. But I'm sure in your early teens you may have done things that you might regret. You might have done things in your 20s or 30s or 40s or 80s. Who knows? The point is this: we all face a point where the question comes to mind, and we're presented with is this: can God ever use me again? Let me tell you something. True ministry and a true heart to serve will always come out of brokenness. Always. We see people with big ministries and we think, oh, it'd be lovely to have a ministry like that, but we haven't paid the price of brokenness that they've had to pay to get there. You see, if there's brokenness in our lives, then there's healing in our lives, and we discover that what we have, that we are stewards of, and actually we haven't got here by our own volition or cleverness or anything else. It is purely by the work of the grace of God in our life. If we are not broken, then that excludes us from being a minister of God more than if we've ever sinned. You see, if we sin and there's no brokenness, then we're in trouble. But if we sin and there has been brokenness, then there can be healing and restoration. This is good stuff. I should be taking notes.